And you know what? I used to call Florida the toilet bowl of America. And I guess it still is. Like, it's hard to beat them. But Texas is really coming close. Texas just wrote a law that said, well, if there's a problem in a voting district and the city or the county has over a certain amount of people, then we can just bring somebody there that we want to redo the vote again. And wouldn't it be funny to find out that that certain amount of people threshold where they can do it only happens in one county? That's the one where a lot of black people are, and it's a big city, and they vote blue. It's over with. It's over with. Which is why, when you find out that there's a poll that says a majority of independents think that Joe Biden is a bigger threat to democracy than Donald Trump. After everything I just told you, completely negating entire counties because they have too many people, because they're urban areas, quote unquote, and sending in your own person to redo the election because you don't like it if you find out that your person didn't win, is all Republicans. After all of these years of talking about how many bad votes there were and how many illegal people voted, the only thing they can find, every single person who has voted twice or voted for a dead person or voted for their dad or their mother has been a Republican. Every time. In all honesty, people, this is what the poll said. It's hard to believe, I know. Decent people of YouTube, it's hard to believe. But just watch this. Oh my God.
Another thing interesting in this polling was more independents said that they worry about President Biden weakening democracy than Trump, 53% to 42%. What do you make of this?
I find it shocking, honestly. I can't, make sense of that number.
The woman that you just heard from, by the way, is a Republican strategist who is shocked by the results of this latest NPR, PBS NewsHour, and Marist poll. And what it found, the most shocking result of this poll, was that a majority of independent voters somehow see Biden as more of a threat to democracy than Donald Trump.
This is what the polls say. We can't change that. I dare you to say to yourself, why is that? Come up with the best reason you can think of as to why that is. Okay? I have a reason. I'll say mine first. Independent voters are the dumbest people on earth. Independent voters are the lowest informed people, the least informed people on earth. That's why they haven't made a choice yet. Can you imagine meeting someone today, not that you can't change their mind, but meeting someone today who still doesn't know who they're voting for in the presidential election? Can you imagine meeting someone who still wonders if they're with Trump or against Trump? If they think Biden is okay or is worse than Trump. Can you imagine the type of person that is? That type of person, in my opinion, is a type of person who only sees the news in the airport on the way to somewhere else. And whatever happened to be on is what they caught. That type of person avoids information at all costs because it makes them feel bad or dirty. That type of person is an idiot. A Trump voter who knows that they're with Trump is still smarter than the person who doesn't know who to vote for yet. Okay? And they want to make themselves feel good by saying that they're independent. Mainly, they were ex-Republicans because they didn't want to call themselves Republicans because of this thing or that one thing. Maybe it sounded bad in decent communities among civilized populations. They didn't want to say it out loud. Maybe some of them were Democrats who feel disenfranchised, feel used by Democrats. And so they said, well, I'm independent. The 54% who said that they believe that Trump was less harmful to democracy than Biden are flaming, abject, idiots, dummies, uninformed. But I want you to guess what Anna thinks about these people.
As we've talked about before, there's a difference in the independent voters of today versus the independent voters from 20 years ago. Back in the day, independent voters were referred to as the low information voters.
Yes, understand. That's why I think that way, because that's how it's always been. But I want to hear the genius of Anna Kasparian on the most progressive station on the internet. Please tell me, Anna.
That's not the case anymore. A lot of independents used to be partisan. But they decided to re-register as independents because they've been unhappy with both sides of the political aisle. And they're actually very much tuned in to what's going on in the country and what's going on in the realm of politics. And so I wonder, and this is my speculation, I don't have data to back this up, but I do wonder.
You don't have the data. I'm sorry. You have no data to back this up. After hearing what you just heard, you still had the gall to come out of your mouth, Anna, and say they're tuned in to what's happening in politics. They're very much tuned in. Biden is worse for democracy than Trump. And you say they're very much tuned in. I've got to hear why, Anna.
Sure. What percentage of these independent voters have looked at what transpired during the Democratic primary and they're like, wait a minute, you guys are claiming that Trump is anti-democratic, which, there is evidence to that, but what about what the Democrats are doing? How come we don't get another option or at least a robust primary as part of this election process?
Look, I wish people paid a lot more attention for personal reasons, let alone political and policy reasons, to what happened in the Democratic primary.
That's the point. The point is Cenk was running for president. And so you, in your stupid little bubble, Anna, really believed that a majority of independents who still didn't know who to vote for were paying attention to a Democratic primary where Cenk was in it. And because the Democratic oligarchy shafted him, that's why they think Biden is more detrimental to democracy than Trump. Is that your analysis, Anna? Is that the analysis, Laura?
No, far from it, my dear. In fact, the New York Times got a hell of a lot of backlash for the alleged poll where she got these numbers from, because of the very biased way they were. Even the fact that they brought up the question of Biden's age was ridiculous. New York Times, did you ask your random voters whether Trump is too insane, doddering, racist, sexist, criminal, traitorous, and hateful to be effective as president? That's not a poll, that's your agenda.
So, back to the first question. All of you out there, you had in your mind what you thought, why that could be. Did any of you have on that bingo card inaccurate polling? Because even though my first thing is idiot voters who have been idiots since day one, we call them independents, the least informed, there's another action or there's another dot you can poke on that bingo card, inaccurate polling.
Hey, I got news for you.
Yep.
Presidential polls have not been right since pre-2016.
Boom! And there you go. Wow. You know what? I'm glad I have a genius on my show. I'm glad I have a genius on my show, guys. Because even though I might be biased, the truth is, when you have a genius on your show, they look things up.
There you go.
while I'm talking and while I'm excoriating the people who may not deserve it, my genius co-host is looking things up while the genius host of TYT is saying, I don't have facts for this, I don't have proof of this, but something tells me they're so smart, they're tuned in. They're so tuned in that they overlooked January 6th. They overlooked Trump saying that he would be a dictator for a day. They're so tuned in that they overlooked Trump saying he wants concentration camps to bring people out of the country, to gather up illegals and put them in concentration camps. They're so tuned in that they didn't hear when he said president for life. That sounds great.
By the time our term is over in 16 years, 12 more years, 16 more years.
President for life, that sounds good.
Live on television. But they're so tuned in that they didn't hear any of that. But because Cenk didn't get nominated, that's why they believe Biden is bad for democracy. That was the analysis of the genius Anna Kasparian. Because they're so tuned in to politics. It's hard to believe. It's hard to overstate. It's hard to even make the rant seem like it's worthwhile because it seems so stupid on its face. But I'm here to tell you that there's a certain amount of people who are listening to this trash and this tripe. Thank God Cenk saved her in the end. It was the worst take I've ever heard on any news station anywhere. Anywhere. Newsmax has had better coverage. And if you don't believe me, this is the tripe that she's on now.